Wouldn't Israel have simply continued building more settlements anyway, regardless of Palestine's upgrade, do you think?
There seems to have been a stepping up of the number of settlements being built directly as a result of the United Nations vote, and Netanyahu seems simply to have not cottoned on to the fact that the vast majority of the rest of the world support the right of Palestine to exist, support the right of Palestinian recognition, and therefore not of occupation of the West Bank. And Netanyahu seems to me to be trying to ride a tiger of extremely right-wing opinion in Israel, which he's of course fermenting.
I had a guest on last night though say this is purely for internal consumption with elections coming up in January.
Well, it probably is, but the reality is, of course, that if he goes ahead with the building of those settlements, that's
well, there's probably more rhetoric. I should have filled that in a bit more. It was rhetoric coming up to the election that it may not even happen. That was her thought, anyway.
Well, that may well be the case, but the reality is that his government has proposed yet more settlements on top of all the settlements that are there. And I would have thought it's high time that the rest of the world took seriously what Israel says and does, and says either you stop the settlements or we start suspending trade agreements and withdrawing ambassadors, just to show you that we do accept the UN result, the UN decision of granting an enhanced observer status to Palestine, and therefore recognition of Palestinian claims.
As you see it, especially given what's happened over the last week, how committed do you think both sides are in achieving this two-state solution?
Well, the two-state solution is something that everyone is at one level signed up to, but the reality on the ground of Gaza still not having complete free movement in and out, and the huge number of settlements across the West Bank and the settler roads, and of course the problems of East Jerusalem, suggest that it's quite difficult to achieve it unless there's a real will to withdraw the settlements and allow Palestine to develop, and I don't see that will at all with Netanyahu.
OK, let me put it another way. Does all the fault, then, if you want to call it fault, lie with the Israelis? Should the Palestinians have been doing more?
Well, the Palestinians have given up a lot of land in lots of negotiations. They've given an awful lot of ground on lots of occasions. And on this occasion, when Israel started bombing Gaza in retaliation, so they say, to the rockets, there's been a much greater sense of unity by the Palestinian side. Surely Israel ought to recognise what the rest of the world recognise, that Palestine is relatively politically united at the moment, and that's something that one should welcome.
Britain, France, Sweden, indeed even Spain as well, all very angry at the moment with Israel. How much credibility could the Israeli government lose, do you think, now after approving these new settlements? Let's look at the foreign political ramifications of it.
Well, they've lost a huge amount of credibility, and they should remember that in the case of Britain, sadly, Britain abstained in the UN vote. It didn't vote for Palestinian recognition despite the wishes of many of us in the British Parliament. The fact that Britain is really angry about it ought to send some kind of message to Netanyahu that if he can't even rely on governments that are basically quite sympathetic to Israel and Israel's claims, then he's losing out big time all around the world, and he just needs to wake up. Israel has got to accept the rest of the world wants peace, wants Palestine to be recognised, and thinks that Israel should stop settlement building and indeed withdraw settlements from the West Bank, as indeed it was forced to do from Gaza a few years back.
Final quick thought about what America might do next. The Americans, of course, backed Israel during its recent offensive on Gaza, but with Prime Minister Netanyahu bent on more settler homes, will Washington's support start to wane, do you think, now?
I think the Washington support will wane very quickly. Obama has been re-elected, and a re-elected president into a second term is at his most powerful, and I think Netanyahu might do well to remember that. He also very much involved himself in the internal politics of the USA during the election campaign, and that can't have endeared himself very much to the administration. The movement around the world for Palestine, for Palestinian people, is unprecedented. Netanyahu should wake up and recognise that.
UK MP Jeremy Corbyn, thank you for your thoughts on RT.